Batman was a South African woman who became a source of amusement for the Europeans in the 19th century due to her large buttocks. She was an African woman who was enslaved and taken to Europe, where her body was put on display for paying audiences. Such mistreatment was allowed to take place because the white society of the time regarded African people, and African women in particular, as inferior. They were not treated as humans. And in this video we bring to you all you need to know about the sad and tragic life of Sarah Batman, who is a symbol of how most black women were treated by the whites back in the days. Sarah Sage Batman was born in a place in South Africa which is now known as Eastern Cape in 1789 to a cattle herding group of the Khoi society. She was born in a farm and her family worked as servants to the owner of the farm. Colonialism was at its peak in those days. Sarah lost her parents few years just after her birth, and she was married off in her teenage years to a drummer from her clan. A Dutch colonialist killed her husband in a dispute and she was left all alone, and in no time she was sold to a slave trader called Peter Scissors, who took her to his house in Cape Town, and Sarah started working as a maid and a servant. In October 1810, she got signed on for a contract by Caesar's English friend who wanted Sarah as a house servant in London and occasionally wanted to use her for entertainment purpose. After the promises of good money, she agreed to move to London. Sarah's illiteracy became a roadblock in her understanding of the true intentions of the people surrounding her, and she found herself on stage in an exhibition as a freak of nature due to her large buttocks and unusual skin color. Scissors and Alexander Dunlop first presented her on stage in London in 1810, and in the month of November the same year, she was shown as part of a performance in the Piccadilly Circus in the Egyptian Hall in London. The organizers thought a lot of money can be made of her condition, and sadly they were right. The people of London had not seen too many black-skinned people by then, and most importantly, not with that large backside. During the rest of the year, many more exhibitions happened as curiosity about Sarah rose and the word spread around quickly like wildfire, and scientific community came ahead to do scientific research on her. The culture of exhibiting people with deformities was a norm in London back in those days and times, and English people found it amusing. Sarah quickly became aware of her being an object of display and tried to fight it, but her employers wouldn't allow that, although it was agreed upon that she wouldn't perform nude. A group called African Association came to know of her and filed a court case to set her free, and as it was just after a few years of passing Slave Trade Act of 1807 in England, it was a further roadblock for Scissors and Dunlop. Cases were filed, and when Sarah was presented in front of the court, she denied all allegations on her honors and said that she came to England by her own free will, and she did not intend to go back to her homeland. She further said that she wasn't getting sexually abused or mistreated, and that she was happy the way she was getting treated. However, the court case only increased her popularity, and she started getting more and more audiences for her shows. Somehow, she got out of England and appeared on stages in Ireland in 1812. A year prior to that, Sarah was baptized, and there has been written proof that she got married in December 1811, on the same day she got baptized. By September 1814, French people had heard about her, and demand started to rise to bring her to France, and a Frenchman named Henry Taylor took the lead and brought her for exhibition in Paris. There, she became the subject of curiosity for several artists and scientists who wanted her for their artworks and research respectively. She became more of a slave to the French people, but even there, she refused to strip naked even after getting offered a large sum of money. French people started treating her worse in the most brutal ways possible, and she ended up being poor, and there are evidences that she was sexually abused, and it has been proven that sometimes chains were tied around her neck. Her promoters did not care much about the slavery charges, and her inhumane treatment continued until she died of an inflammatory disease. In December 1815, Sarah Baartman took her last breath, and complications due to smallpox were said to be the reason for her death. There are sources that mention that her frequent sexual abuse in France exposed her to syphilis, a sexually transmitted disease. The official autopsy of her body was never done in a traditional way, and her death still remains a mystery. Sarah Baartman died on 29 December 1815, but her exhibition continued after her death. Her brain, skeleton and sexual organs remained on display in Paris Museum until 1974. Her remains were repatriated and buried until 2002. She was later described as a brave and intelligent woman who was fluent in her native language and also in Dutch, and she spoke workable French and English. She also had an excellent memory, and it was also said that she was an extremely beautiful woman, if it wasn't for her physical deformity, as the white tend to call it. She became a subject of curiosity around the world after her death, and when Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa in 1984, he asked France to give back her remains. Sarah became an iconic symbol for the dark African colonial past, and several books and poems got written on her, praising her beauty and dignified character. There is evidence that she had 2 children, though both died as babies. She had a relationship with a poor Dutch soldier called Hendrik van Jong, who lived in Hughes Bay near Cape Town in South Africa, but the relationship ended when his regiment left the Cape Coast. After his election in 1994 as president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela requested the repatriation of Baartman remains and Covier's plaster cast. The French government eventually agreed, and this happened in March 2002. In August of that year, her remains were buried in Hanke in Eastern Cape Province, 192 years after Baartman had left for Europe. Several books have been published about her treatment and cultural significance. She has become the landscape upon which multiple narratives of exploitation and suffering within black womanhood have been enacted. The 2010 film Black Venus and the 1998 documentary The Life and Times of Sarah Baartman have covered her story. Even for those outside South Africa who are unaware of Baartman, there have been subtle cultural references to her story.